Winter, spring, summer, fall, seasons change, we still keep it together.
Hey, Beverly Hills 90210 fans! Are you ready to dive deep, episode by episode, storyline by storyline, character by character, as we break down the making of your favorite zip code? With your hosts, Charles Rosen.
Did I say that?
Harry
This
Mullins.
heinous thing about the real person, and we're going, what? We're getting rid of this guy.
Pete Ferrero.
I'm feeling wonderful. Kathleen looks TV crush-worthy.
Like so many special guests. And all your questions. Live on the Beverly Hills 90210 show. Oh, yeah.
Everybody dance now.
Okay, here we are on the Beverly Hills 90210 show again. I'm excited this week. We are really going in the Wayback Machine because we're going all the way back to season 1. So I'm super stoked for this. Before we say hello to our regular usual suspects, Jessica Shaw is sitting in here with us this week. How are you, Jessica? How's everything been?
I'm good, and thank you, Pete, because I feel like I stalk you all the time and say, when can I come back on? When can I come back on? Because this show is such a blast. So thank you for having me.
It's always good to having you. And I will tell you that Chuck said this week, I was sitting outside. He said, we need Jessica Shaw this week. So
because you know about all this. You were in the library in Columbia, right? I mean, so this.
That's right. You are absolutely right.
So can you hear me singing? It had to be you. You know.
Always. Yes, I could.
That's kind of what happened, how that played out. All right. I want to give Melanie an opportunity to talk about what's going on in her world. She's got another hunt coming up.
Yes.
She's going to hunt for Lucinda Nichols. Just tell me about this holiday hunt, Melanie. What do you have going on?
Well, starting next week, December 17th through the 21st, we're allowing Beverly Hills 90210 fans to participate in the virtual scavenger hunt. It's full of fun, trivia, photo, and video challenges, all for a chance to win prizes. We've got over $600 in prizes, and it's really fun. We had a great time in our last one, and you can register now at 90210hunts.com.
All right, Melanie, thank you for that. Thank you for that. I'm going to remove you and say goodbye, and we will catch you
guys.
Bye, Melanie.
Bye, Melanie. All right, this should be a lot of fun. Also want to announce that we have a Patreon now. Sorry, we have to get all this stuff done up at the front of the show now. Larry and I got a chance to talk to Dr. Greg, right? From
Yeah.
which was very
Quite
exciting.
an accomplished guy. It's pretty amazing.
It was incredible. He's a producer. He produced Big Brother. He produced Celebrity Apprentice. You know, with
he invented the
you know
game.
who?
He invents the game. He invents the games. He's a game inventor.
Yeah, exactly. Well, here's a clip of that, and then when we come back, we're going to hop into this.
And like 3-4 years after that, I was standing there with Jenny Garth on set one day before we had this kissing scene when Tara's watching us from the kitchen or from the window.
The balcony,
and I said, I just have to tell you this, 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it was, I was watching on TV, on a black and white TV in Pittsburgh. And this is the reason I came out here. And here I am, like, playing your boyfriend. It was the most surreal. And I tell that story all the time, and it's a true story. I mean, it's just one of those stories that's just like, what are the odds? And holy crap. But anyway, and there I was on the set, and it was just incredible. I felt like I stepped through the TV.
Yeah, so head over to patreon.com/Beverly Hills 90210 show. Lots of really good content. Chuck, we watched One-on-One this week, which was one of the episodes that we're going to talk about. And then we're also doing a big 12 Days of Christmas promotion. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. That should be a lot of fun because we do have a big Christmas show coming up. All right, Chuck, let's get into this, man. Let's talk about the first 6 episodes. And I should note, when we talk about the first 6, you refer to the first 6 as actually the green room being where you first came into the mix of the show. So you're not necessarily referring to the pilot as the first 6.
No. The pilot was a whole different other enterprise, and it was really not what we started in scratch. I've been, because of the Patreon, because of the 12 Days of Christmas, I've been files And I found this one that is, let's see, can I, it's hard to
Call sheet.
It's a call sheet.
from day one.
Wow.
Oh my God, you better read that.
Day 1 out of 7.
Chuck, could you read the cast list in the order? Because this is the most important thing for a cast. What number you are on the cast
Who's
list.
before you and who's after
Brandon
you?
is first and maybe Shannon second, but I could be wrong. Shannon could be first.
Well, let's, no, Jay, it would be, you got 1, 2 right.
Good.
But let's understand that they're the only ones whose names are typed in. Everybody else has been written in, and that includes Jenny Garth.
That's amazing.
Jenny Garth, Brian Green, Doug Emerson, Ian Ziering. It's in that order. But he's 7 and 8, so you know that Andrea Zuckerman's not in these scenes. She's probably in the middle there. And I don't know quite where the parents would be, too. They'd be in there. Luke was more in the guest star group, because it goes all the way up. Oh, Luke Perry's number 10. Luke Perry's number 10, handwritten in, and he didn't work that
perfect 10.
Yeah, he wasn't, but he wasn't. Yeah, he wouldn't have. Well, yeah, he would have been.
A couple of episodes in, he would have been.
So we've got stuff like this going through that'll be fun and exciting to see. But so that was the first, and it's interesting about that day, and I think that it will. It's what I remember most about that episode, The Green Room, and it overshadowed everything else about it, which was that all I heard all effing day, we're behind, as if I could. I'm sitting in, an office that is just like I've been in like 2 days, and they're out in Cabrillo Beach. And, we're drowning trying to get the next one out. And we're behind. And God bless the director, who was a friend of mine named Michael Uno. And that's why I brought him in. He shot it in a oneer. He didn't do coverage. And we finished 5 minutes early. And they couldn't yell at me for the first day of shooting. We shot everything. And we did not go into overtime.
What was the mandate when you came in?
That was the most important thing. That kind of settled my whole experience on the show. Had we gone over the first day and gone over badly, who knows? So that shows you that already from day one, I was already a pattern soldier, guys.
Yeah. Jessica, you asked the question. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was curious. When you came in, what was the mandate of Chuck? We need to get from here we are to this point.
Well, that's a real interesting question. And Mr. Spelling was very clear on it. And I always remember this and give him a lot of credit for it. This was a year a lot of people were going youth programming, and the darling of was not us at Fox. It was Parker Lewis by far. That was the real reflection of what
he couldn't
the network
lose
was all about. Yeah. And we, with that, and there was Hull High over at ABC, and there was Ferris Bueller, and there was The Fresh Prince, and then Spelling's making a show. So what he did was he plucked somebody out who wrote movies of the week and social drama, who had some but very limited series experience, and said, I want to deal with teen issues. He went back. And this is one of the things I wanted to say, and I wanted to get your feelings about this, Larry, because I started really thinking about what company did I go visit on the first day that I was there? What was the vibe that was there? And then when I first showed up to work those first days without a staff, what was the vibe? And the dominant one was sadness. I mean, this had been a mighty company with departments of production and wardrobe and 7, 8 shows on the air. And they are coming off a year of nothing. And all those people have been laid off. There'd been a reversal in the stock market. And to add insult to injury with this TV show, a music video company had been given really more creative leeway on the making of the pilot and theoretically the making of the series than the venerated Aaron Spelling and Duke Vincent. And Duke, who I didn't meet too immediately, his feeling was that, but also anger. What the hell is this guy sitting over there and he's running a show? He doesn't know what he's doing. And he was not 100% wrong, but that was how the Spelling universe felt on those first days. And because they were in financial upheaval, that the license fee was only what Fox would pay, plus, fortunately for 90210, it did have what did still remain intact for the Spelling organization, thanks to CAA, was its own distribution company called World Vision. And so England came in, and Canada came in, Australia came in. They had points of sale, and without that additional revenue coming in, we would have not have even been able to go out one day or build one thing. It would have been really, really even more low budget, and we were the lowest license fee in TV. And the other thing, just to say about that then experience of being the lowest license fee and what happened is, and how really should have started this, was the idea that, I always make a joke because at this point, everything I try to do that. Why did I get, asked to do the show? Well, one is because I went to Beverly Hills High School and I grew up in Beverly Hills. Number two, I was available. And number three, no one else wanted to do it. And that's kind of a funny, okay line at first. But the fact is, what it really represents, and this is what I realized, Larry, they spent 5 weeks hashing out how they were going to do this. Between the companies and this, they were so far behind that, and there were so many other people that came and left or whatever else, and who was really in charge, and what auspices, and was he still making TV, whatever it was, they didn't want in, and none of the other the ICMs of the EA world and the William Morris weren't going to go help a CAA package that had largely excluded them for years. So but I always really do admire that Aaron was able to give us a way to go forward. But if you think that Fox, and I think Fox was really successful branding their network as around Parker, around things. They were, and Married with Children, of course, was already on the air at this point. So they were, a little bit of in your face and attitude and going for young men. And we were doing a transplanted family show set in Beverly Hills.
They also had women in prison.
We were off brand from the moment we started,
Women in prison.
Chuck, they also had women in prison at that time, too.
Well, they used to fight with me about my content, and my lead-in was at 8 o'clock, and my lead-in at 7:30 was studs. So I used to always point that out. What are you telling me? But I think it's interesting. Here's another kind of little Patroni thing. Maybe a 12th day of Christmas. We can get a copy. We can get a signature here. Sure. I think. Let's see. Can you see? Well, you see that Fox logo over there on the side?
Yeah, sort of. What is it?
Right there's a little Fox logo there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That says Fox. It says Inter-Office Memo, and it's Dan McDermott telling Chernin and the guys under him about the class of Beverly Hills, and this is the 10-point memo on the show coming out of research. So this is what the mandate was from the Diller regime, and that was the show is about them. And so in that context, think about the first six, which is, again, as the green room, every dream has its price tag, one-on-one, first time, higher education, and Perfect Mom. Those were the first six. These were the marching orders from the network we were given. Show is about emotion. This is a family show, not a teenage show. Must have character jeopardy. Sense that these kids could fuck up their lives and that these parents are at a crossroads. which is you wonder, did you feel that after a while, a couple of them, I thought they were going to get divorced, after Cindy was so pissed off about being in Beverly Hills,
Yeah.
written that way, but also.
You didn't want a cleaning lady.
No,
no. And of course, that's the most Beverly Hills thing I brought to this. But nonetheless, stories must be provocative and promotable. Show must be realistic and believable. Must have, and this is the worst of them all. This is the one I disregarded. Must have an adult story in every episode. But no, I don't think so. We'll just have adults in the episodes, not necessarily a story. Show must be relevant to families and teenage everywhere, not just Beverly Hills, which we know. Larry, I can see the look on Larry's face going, no, it's actually the opposite you want, right, guys?
Exactly.
I think
that's
does.
what you were selling.
And more, and a couple other points, too.
Yeah.
I wanted to say one thing, because one of the fans, Peter Goldsworthy from Australia,
I know him.
Yes. Melbourne, said to me, he said, in those episodes, there's the line that defines the whole series, which he said was, "Welcome to paradise, man. Welcome to your dreams come true."
Peter Goldberg, you wrote that in the
chat.
He
said that sums up the whole series, and I thought that was kind of cool. So I just want to make sure I got that in.
Yeah,
not necessarily.
Yeah, and it was interesting too, because as someone, as is going to sound really condescending and boomer, and I don't mean it to, but I did grow up when the beach was at its prime. And while we were making this show, there were gangs on the beach and the water was polluted. So it's hard for me to really get behind the physical sale of the, California dream. It really they had to be cleaned up. And fortunately it was by some good people, Heal the Bay out here.
What was the difference in shooting? I'm sorry, Pete, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, you saw the pilot, Chuck, right? The first thing that they send you is the pilot. What was your reaction to it when you saw that?
Well, I was at the time, I was a writer-producer of Northern Exposure. I was the only writer-producer on staff. My bosses, very talented Josh Brand and John Falsey, were in Washington the whole time making the show. And I was doing a page one rewrite, my favorite script of all. It was hard to try to get the tone. So I'll be honest now. Here's something I never shared before. I started smoking pot in the morning to be writing this fucking show. And I did that all day and got to that point. And then they send this over. And I got to go back. I'm not finishing it. It's 2 days to go. And I start to look at the 2-hour version of the Class of Beverly Hills, and I fall asleep. And when I wake up, I probably fell asleep after about 20 minutes. And then when I wake up, I got the choice. Go watch it again or do the work that you're being paid to do. So that's what I did. And I passed on the show. And what happened is that Mr. Spelling wanted to be able to at least have me hear what his vision was, how to do the show, what he wanted to do. And I would get to have a meeting with a legend. And that's how I looked at it. I didn't really expect that I would leave Northern Exposure for a Spelling show.
But yes, and all that implied, because that was a stigma, as we all know.
Yeah, and it was, yes. And the other thing, of course, is that Northern Exposure was a low-budget summer show. And this was that, plus a little bit more foreign in spelling. And Mr. Spelling was much more generous than the people who made the other. So there was incentive for me to look at the new 90-minute one, which is the one that we pretty much was aired. James Eckhouse hadn't been cast yet to replace the father who was in it, but it was pretty much it. And and the interesting thing about it, and what really sold me, is not in the version that even I saw of the one that aired, because I guess they didn't license the song. How they ended it in the reel that they showed out to sell it was they went back, took all the best moments, visuals of the episode, but they played it against the B-52s singing Rome Around the World. And it's a real cute, peppy song. Had nothing to do with the show that you had just seen, but we got to see all of the kids against it. And I remember thinking there was one thing with Jenny Garth wearing some bicycle shorts. And I went, that's cute. That's a good outfit choice. And a couple of Jason, I went, I kind of like these characters, even though it was more than the sum of its parts.
Go ahead, Jessica. What were you going to ask?
I was just curious for Chuck and Larry just about what it was like filming. We got to see in the first 6, we got to see scenes set at the beach, and you get to see Dylan on a surfboard and Brandon just like wiping out in the waves because he's from Minnesota. He's landlocked. He only knows lakes, not ocean.
Right.
And what the difference was between shooting at the beach at a beach in season 1 versus later in the show when you've got the beach club and Brandon's working and there's so much there. And there must have been hysteria during those scenes.
Sure. That's good. Yeah. Good question.
Well, really in the beginning, because we were a non-union show, it's not harsh because some of these people, I think our DP man who shot David Geddes, the first episodes, was shot some of the most beautiful footage we did the whole time. But, and there were some really other talented people at that point, but by and large, the crew was pretty much glorified AFI. This was non-union. This were people who were available right at that moment. And it was, and I want to bring that up because this really also really put us behind the 8 ball and had a lot to do with the first 6. And Larry will remember this time is that it was the idea that doing a non-union show for a broadcast network in Los Angeles, the home of the International Alliance television studio engineers, was, a declaration of war.
You're looking over your shoulder.
And why is because this was, early 1990 when they're making the pilot, and we had just come off a very contentious labor strike between the Writers Guild and management. And Barry Diller was the leader of management in that strike. He and Jeffrey Katzenberg, huge, towering figures. And he was pissed off at the whole creative community for causing an interruption in the business flow and the launch of that. So you had that element not wanting to be and daring, and you also is a company owned by Rupert Murdoch, and Duke Vincent also was a very much an independent, right to work kind of guy in his heart, and so we're going to break the union, and we're going to do it this way with this crew, which they were not able. If Larry would write a script or I would write a script today, and people would budget it out and say, it's going to take you 11 hours to shoot this. This is the goal. This is what we need because we don't want to go over 12 hours, God forbid. You would you can budget that out. But this crew had no ability to do that. And we were lucky to have them come in just under 14 hours. And to be able to make, this is really inside baseball and budget, and I'm sorry, fans, but it's interesting. Larry hasn't heard some of this stuff, I don't think, that we were able at that point to basically say, look, this is what it costs, and you won't get in trouble, and we can pay the non-union guys, and they'll be very happy. And indeed, it was rejected. And 2 days into the show, we get closed down, and there we are. Now, they gave us some time to organize in this and talk to all the departments in this, and it is the 6th episode. It is the episode that his perfect mom is on the floor, and the union is out there waiting for a vote. And ironically, or maybe this is a tell, the person who stands up and urges them to go on strike was Shannon Doherty. And she, which is ironic because she always was a conservative and also more on the Duke Vincent thing. But she was caught up in the emotion of it. It's an emotional time, and that was foisted on this crew that could never make this, window, this 14-hour day. They were working so hard and not getting overtime. Wasn't great. So they were susceptible for strike too, right from the start. But the other person who then spoke was me. And I just told the crew, if you guys vote to go on strike, you might as well strike the sets. They'll cancel us. Our rating, we've gone on we went down decidedly in our second episode. Overnights from the third one wasn't, was okay, but down still. And, there we were. And the union, our crew voted by one vote to stay in production. And at that point, we made a switch in line producer. A man named Paul Wagner joined the show, and we were in a different world. That's why, Larry, I always see the first 6. You talk of the first 12, but it really is the first 6, and then in the aggregate, the 12th.
Right.
And when they didn't cancel us at that point, they just decided, for whatever, they didn't really have anything back up. The Fox network was also under extreme pressure because they finally had a really big hit on their hands, didn't they, Jessica, with The Simpsons? And they were so happy, and they went to the upfronts and they sold it up and down the board. It was the big seller. Everybody's talking about it. And they guaranteed the advertisers that the show would be on the air in the first week of September without asking the animators when they could have the material ready, which really was the first week of October. So we jumped on that date. We said, come on, guys, you hired me late. So, we gotta, give us a break. Don't ask us to come at July 4th. I mean, we can't have this ready in 5 weeks. And they gave us basically 7 weeks. But not really, because they kept turning us down when we kept talking about the stories we wanted to do.
Well, I think one of the most important things that happens in the green room, I'm going to show you a quick clip, is this person.
Hey. My name's Brandon Walsh. Brandon Walsh. Scotch or Irish? Both, actually. By way of Minnesota. Listen, what you did to those 2 Nimrods back there was great. Yeah, well, I just don't believe in winning through intimidation. Unless, of course, I'm doing the intimidating.
Chuck, how important is Luke Perry to this, to the mix of the first 6?
Well, he's mad, bad, and dangerous to know, and it's certainly my favorite line of the script. And
that's a Lord Byron. That's when he compares himself to Lord Byron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's what we got in the first 2. And this is, I had not seen the first 2 since they aired. Well, either of them. Both of them, to me, represent something else than anything that's logical. At this point, Larry, too, they didn't tell me that I had the right to be involved with actual post-production after it leaves the editor's room, after Mr. Spelling signs off. So I never knew what went on after that. We did talk about the songs that we would, put in lock, but, I didn't know that. So we'd go back more to just the writing part of it, try to get that done. But Luke came to my house, and Karen's at my wife's house in Carthay Circle, which is, kind of near the County Art Museum. And we had the cast reading, and we were waiting for Jason and Shannon to show up because they were having a publicity shot layout that went over. And I think Jenny was there too at the shot. I don't remember that so much. Anyway, they arrive and we start doing the reading. And that seems fine for me. I've never done a reading like this, certainly on a show, but I'm running this. Actors are there. They seem to be getting on. Luke and Jason, those meetings, there was nothing that stood out about anything. Everybody seemed happy to be there. The director was there. So was the director of the second episode, who starts whispering in my ear, you have to rewrite this script. You have to rewrite the script now. And I'm going, no, just listen to, now it wasn't, Shakespeare, but, shit, it was the script and it was different in some ways that we thought would come to us. We thought it was a really, that it surprised our writing staff how close it was to the tone of the pilot in some ways. But it also had this intellectual quality. David, the writer, went to Yale, and the next one, Amy, the writer, went to Harvard. And, we're talking about Les Miserables.
Right.
It could have been a seminar at Columbia, Jessica, right? I mean,
that's right.
So it really, and I really do admire these two episodes because they only represent, by the way, I did not rewrite the script.
I did like so.
I'm bored with that. But, and I actually liked it watching it now. And I liked every price tag watching it now. And my memory of every price tag, and I shared this with Pete, is that I actually had to walk onto the stage shooting stuff in Brenda's bedroom and had to basically ask the director to step aside. I was allowed to do that per management rules with the DGA. And we would do a shot, what was set up. She would rehearse them. We would do one shot. I would turn to the DP and said, "Was there dirt in the camera? Did you get it right? Was it okay for you? Good. Moving on." And we took about 6 shots in about 14 minutes, and we didn't go into double overtime in the first day of the second episode. So you can see it really was on my mind. Yeah. And we really needed to not be weak in that area to get the respect of the spelling company, particularly Duke Vincent.
Justina says, I guess every time I see him sitting there, meaning Dylan, that's there was the hottest seat in TV. Do you think, I'm sorry, Chuck, do you think bringing Luke on was a critical moment in the decision there, right, of the first 6?
Yes. It's absolutely. And after seeing the pilot, too, there was a void. I mean, and it isn't a void, it's the way characters are written that you go off of. But we really needed somebody who was more mysterious, who was different. And, we called him Dylan for Matt Dillon, thinking of him on a motorcycle. And we had that element of it. The staff writer, story editor on the show, Jordan Booty, was the one who said, wouldn't it be cool if he lived by himself in a hotel? So, that's what writers' rooms do. You kick around and someone does that. And that one we all liked. And that he wore sports coats and things like that.
And that car.
Yeah.
And a Porsche. Yes, it was absolutely. No, let Steve Sanders have the Corvette. This is the Porsche, the cooler car.
And you're touching social issues, right from the beginning. Every dream has its price tag. You mentioned this whole thing about the shoplifting. How are you kicking around these ideas for the first 6, and particularly talking about, I guess, that episode and the shoplifting deal?
Well, it's interesting. One of the other ones I saw, something for the Patreon, is these are the stories that we had and Aaron Spelling had on June 11th, 1990. And I think we had been a staff for about 3 days and, kicking off the different stuff. And some of them, hey, there's a story about a legacy key. There's a story about tutoring a basketball black athlete, not the one with the busing in, but effectively Deshaun. There's a Brenda Kelly Brandon triangle for somehow. We decide we really want to use dreams. I don't know what that means, Larry. I see that. I don't know how there could have been that triangle, but who are you really friends with? That kind of thing, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I see.
Loyalty.
I guess, it's conditioned to be played out, it says. We knew that we wanted to do dreams because we wanted to do some stylistic kind of things at that point. We wanted to fit in more with what was going on with Parker Lewis and the other of the Fox promotion
Oh, I got
world.
that now. Yeah.
We've got one about a maid's daughter coming to school, auditions in the school play, Steve's mother, an actress in need of work, and an affair with a teacher, from a character called Holly Hunter. And I have no idea what that means, to tell you the truth. I think we were after some character that would
Like Holly
be,
Hunter.
that, or maybe that was what we called Andrea. That's what we must have called Andrea, because she was like Holly Hunter in broadcast news.
Yeah.
Whoever was writing this down didn't know her name. Excuse me, that's what it is.
Alicia wanted to know about Tiffany, the character Tiffany. She wanted to know if you guys had ever thought about keeping her on. The shoplifter herself. Was she someone that you thought would be in the cast at some point?
I really enjoyed her and the conversations I had with her. If you go back, we'll go to her IMDb page, you see she was really a working actress in the 90s. And one of her big roles, I don't know if you realize this, Jessica and Larry, she was one of the 3 actresses who played Amy Fisher in the Joey
With
Buttafuoco
Drew
story.
Barrymore.
Well, my
and
brother scored that. Long Island
Yes.
Lolita.
She was the NBC version. She was the
Yeah,
last
That
one.
was my brother's.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
And she was really good.
She
And
was great
you know,
in that.
I have to
Yeah,
say, I'm
and
from the same
that's good
hometown
casting.
as her, as Amy Fisher. She's from my hometown.
Well, they have that. Yeah.
Merrick, Long Island. Merrick, Long Island. Represent.
yeah. And we just didn't have any money to bring anybody back for anything. And yes, sure, we would have liked to, but she had other obligations. She was moving in a different galaxy. I'm glad she came in and did the show.
And you said before that the network had a thought about maybe the adult stories. I thought Jim and Cindy are great in the show, but you did not push the adult stories too much. There is an episode we'll cover down the line where you did go down that road, the 17-year itch. But so how are you trying to fit them in every week, I guess is the question.
Well, if it's a Walsh family series, then there's conflicts between child and parent.
That's right.
And looking at these episodes, it's interesting that the arc of Brenda, because in these first 6, and she even makes a little fun of it in herself in one of the scripts, that she can't believe how shallow she's become because she's caring so much about the clothes and who's there and the party and this, and she hasn't done Teen Line yet. Hasn't done much, outside of that. And between that and going to Isn't It Romantic, those 2 changed her character. But at this point, she's really susceptible to peer pressure. And I feel that, again, we were talking a little bit about with Cindy, being very unhappy to be in smoggy LA, and Amy Spees and myself, we both are from Los Angeles. Amy was a friend of mine from high school. So I wanted someone also like that. But Amy had never done an episode of television. I realized, I was really a movie of the week guy, and back then my pilots weren't getting made. So Larry, they give me this show. I've got 5 hours of credit. That's all I got. That's all I've ever seen. Is that as a writer for 5 hours? That's all I've. 2 staff jobs in 5 hours. So I really was not prepared to take over a show. I didn't understand what the function is what a showrunner was. And I figured the only reason I was there was because I was a writer. And I didn't need to know about the production stuff, because to stay there would have to be through the writing, as it were. And so one-on-one was mine to write during this period of time.
Speaking of Pete's question,
go ahead.
I was going to say, Pete, you referenced the adults and stuff, and I need to know the backstory on Hartley House, because I'm obsessed with that show. I don't know what it was. I don't know who came up with it, and I don't know why someone is making a web series called Hartley House.
Right? Yes. How does that not exist? Yeah.
What
a great spinoff. Yeah.
It's all there. It's all Darren Star. You're friends of him. You know him. Call him up. Tell him, let's do it. But I agree. It's very cute. And I actually did even talk to somebody about why don't we do that? I thought it was a cute idea. I mean, it was just, who knows what. I mean, it was the old kind of, you know, 8 is enough or,
Brady Bunch. Yeah.
Out of that.
Well, Chuck, when we promoted the show, you said you were going to tell a story that you've never told before until today, right? And we talked before we came on air, and you told me the story. Are you ready to share the story that you've never shared before?
Remind me which. We had so many. I was telling you that
somebody that had to be removed from set.
Ah, yeah. So early on, we just had the vote. And Paul Wagner we're transitioning into the show. He's doing his first one. Jeffrey White's cleaning up. Paul walks on the set and notices that a guy is sleeping in his chair at 11 o'clock in the morning and asks a question or two. And we escorted the productions company's drug dealer out of the building. Because I don't have a clue was he the camera department? Was he a grip? Didn't matter. He was there to cause mischief. And he got busted, and that's what we did in episode 7.
Ooh. Who was he causing mischief
Not that
with?
uncommon in sets in those days. Certainly.
Yeah, but this was a
dangerous.
Because they were working such ridiculous long hours, quite frankly. But this would include, they could have used some speed.
But they would always have the doctor who would come over sometimes, Chuck, and give them the vitamin C shot, keep them working. We'd have that too. The Dr. Feelgood would come over.
Okay. This Sherry wants to know, do you remember anything about standards and practices having to say anything about Brandon and Cheryl's sex scene in the first time?
No. I don't. It went very smoothly. There was no friction in that episode at all. Once we got these ordered, and ask me how the mix up in the order, Sherry, when the next time we speak, and I can tell you a different story that we shouldn't get into right now. But there's definitely there were episodes we were fighting over back and forth. These were not one of them.
I think this is in higher education, Chuck. How much trouble did this cause?
Yeah. So we're in a room writing stories, and somebody, I don't know if it's on this sheet of paper or the other sheet of paper.
If you're listening and driving, it was Brenda in blonde hair, and that's in higher education, I think, right? Yeah.
That's it. And not knowing that Shannon kind of defined her whole being as defined by, I'm the brunette. I'm the brunette in Hollywood, not the blonde. So she didn't like it to begin with. And then we didn't have much money. So it was a pretty, I liked the people who worked in the show early on, but it was an intentionally shitty wig because we were making fun. We were having a good time, but she was not a happy gal. And she let the producers, one of the producers who was not, he and I were not that much in harmony, begin to criticize the idea that we would make our star wear such a crummy little wig. And the people from propaganda stood up and pushed back. And I always will be very appreciative that they did. But I didn't realize that I was tapping into something that made star of the show very unhappy, and obviously we could have come up with something different if that was the case.
Right. All right, let's go into one-on-one. This is one of the things that we really wanted to talk about. I want to show somebody that we talked to this week. This was pretty fun. We actually talked to Joshua Carton, who's the driving instructor, which is awesome. So he had a couple of fun things to say. Let's use this one first.
Do you like Pete or Peter?
Pete, but it doesn't matter. I'm good with Peter too.
Paul, no. I was in tears when that thing happened on the basketball court and those guys reconciled. Now, what did they say about Oscar Levant? He could cry at the opening of a supermarket. But I was really touched, and I had seen the other, seen an episode to prepare for this you sent me, the one in which Mr. Vargas and Miss Leishman talked about what Charles had done and the things he took on, which at the time, for a lot of us were like, well, of course. But the more I heard, I understood what he had really done and what it meant to people. To include what shouldn't be issues, but still are. And I found myself tearing up on the basketball scene.
And we have some clips of him talking about the driving. But why don't we talk about the Chuck? This is the first episode that you wrote for the series.
Right.
So tell me where you were coming with the basketball.
Well, as we've talked before, and and Jessica, you certainly maybe you've heard conversations about it. Certainly, Entertainment Weekly would point it out to us that this was an all-white cast. And at this point, we were being pummeled by being compared to other shows coming out. All High particularly was almost a celebration of diversity. And, we were just, it was just typical spell and this, so backward. So I needed to do something like that. This is a real the basketball story is a Beverly Hills story. The first athletes who were bussed into Beverly Hills in 1969 and 1970, first kids, I should say, mostly from Baldwin Hills and Inglewood, were all athletes and participated. And certainly by the time I graduated college 4 years later, Beverly Hills was a sports powerhouse in all the fun, So I wanted to put it in there that, to get something about it in this and try to deal with race relations, knowing that our star, Brandon, really hadn't had that much interaction with Black people, being from Minnesota back then. I know this because I spent my freshman year at University of Wisconsin. And the states are not that similar in that regard. And so I thought that looking back on it, that, would he be so confrontational in his, approach to it, in going for the story? But, that's what, in that point, Jay looking at it and being directed, that's what seemed what was wanted, the passion. And I read you the network notes. So it was all, let's take it up and not make it a little more subtle.
I was wondering, Chuck, about the scenes with Brandon and Steve in that, because Steve really spews some hateful things. I mean, everything from talking about, I root for the Celtics, and which is anyone who knows basketball knows what that's code for, And
it was a code.
Dog whistle.
It was a code. It was a dog whistle. I was not overt. And I thought it was pretty. I admire how Ian did it, because Ian did not want to say, excuse me, Ian is Steve, that Steve did not want to come off as that socially unacceptable, blatantly racist person. So it was the idea being but I'm interested in Larry's point of view on this, because I also think a lot of it was disappointment. Larry knows, he knows a lot of young athletes in this city. He helped them there. And they would go to this high school called Harvard Westlake, which was a regional high school. And both in, a lot of sports, they brought in great athletes to be there. And the kids who always wanted to play and saw that as their dream weren't eligible anymore. So it wasn't a completely meritless position, at least emotionally. It may not be.
Yeah, emotionally. Brandon never got a chance to kind of challenge Steve on that. I mean, he kind of takes his anger out on Jim. I have to tell you, the Brandon Jim scene, I was getting. This sounds crazy, Chuck, but I got a chance to work with Jim Backus, who played James Dean's father in Rebel Without a Cause. And this reminded me a lot of the scene in Rebel Without a Cause with Jim, come on, Jimbo. And, not your thing, Dad. And it was just, I thought Jason did a magnificent job there. And that scene really worked like Powerhouse, I thought. On the other thing with Ian, I was a little bit worried. I mean, in today's world, they're going, oh my God. I mean, I hope they resolve this. He just seems like a totally entitled, white privileged, racist. But, again, we were in 1990. It's just a different world.
It sure was. Willie Horton was 2 years old at that point, and in one sense, and also the idea that it's hard to believe, and it's almost with apologies. Steve's character could have been sacrificed to the lambs at that point. This was Brandon and Brenda's TV show. This was the Walsh family TV show, and that's what you're seeing for 6 episodes.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the other thing I noticed in watching it, it's interesting. You got 2 nerds. You got the battle of the nerds, and like only one nerd can survive because Brian made his bones by having the other guy die. He became a man. It was really kind of classic, 2 nerds.
Somebody just said Tico Wells is unbelievable in this episode. I'm going to show you guys a scene of Tico Wells and Brandon in the library.
What are you doing here?
I don't have to justify myself to you.
Yeah, just asked a simple question.
No, it's not simple at all. What you're really asking is, how come a dumb black jock who can't read and who...
Hey, I never said that, James.
Right.
If you just would answer my questions about the Applied Learning Opportunity Program...
How the hell should I know about the learning program? I'm not a part of it.
Quiet, you weren't recruited here to play basketball?
That's right.
But you don't live in the district, do you?
Caught me red-handed.
I just want to know how you got permission to go to school in the district.
I don't need permission. My father has worked for the Beverly Hills City Library for 15 years, and that gives me as much right to be here as anyone.
Hold it down, please.
Including you.
Library. So the reason the ALOP office didn't have your records is because you're not part of their program?
I already told you. I'm here because my father earned a right for me to be here. Not because I was recruited or because I want to be.
I don't know what to say.
Then why don't you try saying nothing? See, I was getting by fine in Inglewood when my parents decided it was time to upgrade my education. 4 weeks into the semester, making me have to play catch-up from the get-go.
Sounds like what happened to me.
Yeah, right. That's why your old man tried to suck up to the coach.
Hey, that's not what went down at all.
Yeah, I love it. You rich white boys, you get the world handed to you, no strings attached, and you honestly think that's how it is for everyone.
Excuse me, I don't know whose bank account you've been looking at, but I am not rich.
Yeah, but you're white. And that's why your first impulse was to think, hey, he's got to be dumb or a rap singer or in a gang or smoking crack or whatever stereotype fits your fears. But that's your problem. That's not my problem. And so what if I need a little extra help adjusting to life at the almighty West Beverly High School? So what if I use my God-given talent to get me into the college of my choice? I ain't got nothing to hide, got nothing to be ashamed of, and nothing more to say to you. Slam dunk. Yeah, that's dropped by.
Never mind.
Yeah.
Now, I have a Tico Wells story that I have never shared, I don't think. And so this would fall into it. Can I tell my Tico Wells story?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
So I needed to know if the talented young actor who had just come in can really play basketball or any of the other ones. And so we held the audition in my backyard where I had a basketball hoop that wasn't that different than what they had at the Walshes, except mine was really regulation height, and that was short to make them all look a little better. And also I had a bigger area of space to play. You didn't know me then, Larry. I played basketball 3 days a week, usually about 5, 6 o'clock at night. And then we had the Saturday morning game, all on Beverly Hills elementary school playgrounds that we'd have to jump over fences to get into. And I realized my last game I played on a Saturday morning after I had started my first week on 90210, that would be the last basketball game I'd be playing for a while. And it was. And the fact is that I then, I wanted someone who knew how to play, but I was warmed up. I knew how to play. And so Tico and I went one-on-one in my backyard. And I got +1 on him. And he couldn't effing believe it. Hebrew. I felt like somebody off the playground at CCNY or something. But I made the shots, and it was that I always remember. And had these series been canceled in the first 6, that would have been my highlight. That would have been my highlight reel right there.
Miriam, who's on our Patreon, wanted to know, did the producers ever consider casting any black actors or actresses as series regulars? Great question, Miriam.
Let's take a deep dive into Ashes to Ashes sometime. And that's from the second year, which we had, Vivica Fox and Tina Lifford and a real interesting cast. And that was the intention was that we could spin this off. And the marketplace wasn't really ready for that. So, and the audience, 90210, was not ready for it, as our ratings would always attest.
Michelle wants to know the other storyline in this thing. For Charles, why did you decide to have Brenda be a bad driver?
Because we needed some humor.
Yeah.
And, and the idea being is that when I told Shannon this is where I thought I'd be going with her in this, she really liked it because she was challenged as a driver too. But her challenge was not to go 80 miles an hour on the freeway. But nonetheless, so she had a unique relationship with automobiles. And, that idea that, you can just, move to LA and not have to drive or live in a urban place back east or in the Midwest and not really need to have a car and not even care about having a car and come to LA, and how can you live without a car? So
who thought of naming the car Walter Mondale?
Yeah, please. This is a big question.
It gets explained in the episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Democrat. Hello. Who else would? What, am I going to call it Hubert Humphrey? No, it was, no one would know what I was talking about.
I don't know, but like Rupert owns Fox, and he's not exactly,
right.
I don't think he was donating to the Mondale's campaign.
Definitely.
When we worked at Fox, though, it did not feel like a conservative place. It was the exact opposite. It was the anti-establishment network. I mean, it felt like we were the outsiders, and we never thought about the politics of it at all. It never came up.
Yeah, they weren't calling it Proud Boys then, but it was, kind of disaffected young guys who weren't as extreme. Obviously, people who were starting to play games and on computers. And the reason is, I think you might know this, Jessica, it's because they're the easiest to peel off. They were the easiest demographic to peel off from the network. Because they already had come off to follow wrestling and other stuff. And you got to understand with Fox, they were doing some really hip, as we said, It's Gary Shandling's show and In Living Color. They
didn't do Gary Shandling.
Not, it's the Gary Shandling show, not the late night show, his first show.
Yeah.
That was on Showtime. That was on Showtime.
No, you're thinking of Larry Sanders.
Larry Sanders was on HBO.
Yeah.
But this
okay.
It's Gary Shandling show with Fox.
All right, let's see what Josh Carton had to say about driving.
I knew, and even watching it now, really nothing about working in front of a camera, to the point that when we started the filming, I had the first line. It was very quiet, so I just started. And somebody said, excuse me, the AD says action. And I was mortified. I began in a shame attack.
Was Brad Gross your AD? Do you remember?
No, he would not.
The other one. Yeah, Stringer. Okay.
Well, I mean, he wasn't being cruel or anything. He was just taking care of business. But, if you're nervous, to not even know who's supposed to tell you to talk was nerve-wracking.
Well, we all were in in those early episodes, I always called them learn while you earn. Believe me, most of the crew didn't know what they were doing, and certainly the showrunner didn't. You had to learn on the spot.
Chuck, how did you think of Joshua for this part? Where did it come from your brain? It's got to be Joshua.
Well, I thought of him for many reasons, but one was because, he would be, most of the driving teachers had other instructors had other jobs. They were coaches. Sometimes Chuck Close was a history teacher. There were other people who did it. And my hope was that Joshua would be in this role. He would be very funny, which he was.
Yeah.
And it would be recognized by my production company. And I could bring him back numerous times whenever a teacher was kind of necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Some dreams get deferred, and that was one that I didn't get to do, fortunately.
Well, at the time I was teaching in the School of Theater at USC, so it was all doable. But I also think if you wrote it with me in mind, and I see this looking at it now, I mean, a lot of people, I think, are uncomfortable looking at themselves. The first time I ever saw myself in dailies, I knew I was about to enter, and the next thing I knew, I was under the seat, under the chair in horror. I mean, really, a blackout moment. So I think you probably wrote it with certain understandings of my eccentric, well, others say that, I mean, behavior and vocal patterns and such. And I realized looking at it that I was aware that I was trying to be the me that you had written it for, which was an interesting and somewhat successful, but somewhat not.
I think it was. I mean, I wrote it for the guy with the bow tie. You know?
Yes, and I had the bow ties. That I brought my own costuming. That was my bow tie.
And here's what he said about working with Shannon.
You know, we really were talking also that, you know, you're in the episode one-on-one, and you're teaching Brenda how to drive, and then that camera pulls back, and you realize you're in this huge empty parking lot, you know, and it's a joke payoff. And I was pointing out to Peter in this one that whenever there was humor, and Brenda's story was pretty much humorous from start to finish.
Right.
I didn't go to any punchlines. It was all in the behavior and delivery. And so you were, you know, got a lot of laughs of us watching it today.
Yes.
And
right. But I didn't earn them. The cut did. I will say you gave me one, which was, and if you find a teacher, no, you're only as good a driver as the teacher, and I'm sure you'll find somebody who has a death wish, and
yes. And Shannon went right over Brenda's head, right over her head. Like,
right.
She didn't see that. She didn't even react to it, you know. Excuse me.
Do you have specific memories about shooting those scenes with Shannon and being in that world at that time? After watching it?
Yes. Oh, yes. I understood something. I understood enough about acting, but I didn't really know about the camera. And so I would see everybody crowded around the monitor. And I had known Danny Attias younger. But I didn't understand what was interesting about her. But she fills with these things that happen in her face. But live, I wasn't understanding yet what the television and the camera and the frame and where she was alive.
Really, really great interview. And that's going to be in full on Patreon. He also, Chuck, was Brenda's or Shannon's language instructor to learn the accent for when she went to Paris in season 3, or 2.
Keep that one for the patrons, right?
Yeah, for Patreon. Yeah,
we call this an FOC, friend of Chuck's.
Yeah,
they're through it, you know. And you know that they got friends of LM too. You know, when you have friends, this is what they do. A lot of the mothers from the Center for Early Education played the nurses and the teachers and things like that. That's for sure.
Alicia was asking about higher education. She asks about the line where Brenda says, "I like your butt." I mean, bike. Was that in the script? And do you have any thoughts on who would come up with that?
I'm sure it was in the script.
Yeah.
Oh yes. In higher education,
Shannon did not improvise.
I think there was a lot of writing on that. It would probably be Jordan Booty, probably be the original writer, the credited writer. If not, it would have been Karen.
That's appropriate.
Yeah.
That she was involved with this rewrite, as was I a little bit.
Can I ask another question about one-on-one, just to go back to the storyline, race storyline? I'm curious what Aaron Spelling and what was the reaction after that episode? Because it's such a compelling episode. It's important. Even just watching that scene, Pete, that you just replayed, he says so many important things that were relevant then. They're sadly still relevant, and those conversations, like, Lord knows there's still going to be some white guy questioning someone and saying, hey, do you belong here? And it was important that you did that. But I'm curious, after that episode was in and the team and the network and Spelling and Duke saw it, did they think, okay, we need to do more of this, or did they say, okay, you did that one episode, now let's move on?
Good question.
The only time at the point that they said, why don't you stop with the social drama, after encouraging me and encouraging us to do the problems and the dramas and do that. So when they finally stopped doing that and said, lighten up, we did Fame Is Where You Find It. When Brenda's Laverne and that, we went a completely lightened up direction. This is what they bought. This is what they figured Aaron could deliver. And I feel that in this one, I think now what happened was that in terms of the broadcast airing order, they jumped over this episode to air first because more marketable, more provocative, more commercial, more saleable in that regard, sex, and with the character and all of that. And there were also some dramatic scenes in the promo, I'm sure. And so ours was the next one. And I think it was after this one aired that there was and it may have been after first time, but I think it was this one. Because, as again, the Green Room and Price Tag were seen as the experimental ones in some ways, looking at it at the time. And that the show is finding its footage. And First Time and One-on-One, the one thing that you can say about both of them is that they are constructed hours of television, and that the act breaks move forward. They were put together, and I think they, and this one too had that. But what happened is they had the meeting, and Diller walks in, and he says, "Yes, I'm happy with the episodes I'm seeing, but does it belong on our air, our brand? Does it belong that?" But they didn't really have the resources to replace us. So at this point, when we do the first 6, the 17-year itch, the story that really made it clear that we were not going to be telling adult stories anymore, when to drive action, which was Cindy's almost having an affair. We just took that one away. From episode 8 to 14, which is Gentle Art of Listening, Isn't It Romantic, BYOB, One Boy and a Baby, Slumber Party, East Side Story, and Palm Springs Weekend, they left us alone. The show wasn't, what was going to be? The ratings weren't that good. The order was there. We were making shows that were okay, and that was a real fun time to make the show. 8 to 14. McDermott and I, nobody really watched them. Nobody was on our head. We just made them and put them in. And so, but the first 6 are different, and that we got through it is kind of a miracle.
Val wants to know, where did the idea of Mr. Denzel's character and his outdated leisure suits come from? That's another higher education one.
Okay, well, here's the higher education came from. The suits are from my high school history teacher named Salvatore Acapeni. And the character who said that I'm the only class you're going to remember was a college instructor named Larry Rosenfeld in Wisconsin, who did that curve, the 10% A, 10% F, and 80% C, no pass, not pass. So he was there to fight grade inflation in 1970. But this is my high school teacher, and indeed, tests were stolen for a final in history. And all my friends were in the class, and all my friends had the test. I didn't want to see it.
Mhm.
And neither did my study partner, David Lewis. You know David, right?
The Hamburger Hamlet.
Hamburger Hamlet, my wonderful guy, David. We're lifelong friends, and we took history seriously, and we liked the fact that our brains still worked and we could memorize stuff, and we didn't want to do it that way. And the funny part of that real story is that the guy who stole it didn't want to be too obvious, so he made a couple of intentional errors. And one of the other guys, Larry, who you had lunch with in London, that guy. You remember when I visited?
I do. The conductor, yeah.
Very famous and very nice life. He didn't, just wrote them all the right ones. And he didn't take any off. He was that guy who threw the curve up. And David and I, we knew our stuff. So maybe I missed one or two. He missed one or two. And the guy who did the intentional one, there were so many that had it that he was out of the loop. And he got a B+ and not an A, and he only got a B in the class. So that's cheaters never prosper. That's where the story came from, guys.
You're so Brandon, Chuck.
Yeah, definitely. Listen,
it's an interesting thing, and let's go back to one-on-one. I didn't know Jason well enough to say that. I didn't want to be that presumptuous. That happened in the second season. And then he realized when he was doing political things, he didn't have to always be so confrontational, because I wasn't.
Listen, I mean, one of my favorite scenes in that episode is our buddy Dylan here.
Brenda, Earth to Walsh. What is wrong with you?
Jacob Denzel, American History.
Ah, yes. Had him last year.
You did?
Yeah, some wardrobe, huh?
Some teacher. All he cares about is his holy curve.
Yeah, well, he's retiring this year.
He is?
Mm-hmm. He just wants to keep it quiet, though. Doesn't want everybody making a big deal.
I'll tell you what, if Denzel announced his retirement, it wouldn't be a big deal. It'd be a national holiday.
I learned a lot from him personally.
All I'm learning is how to cheat.
Watch out, man. You're flirting with bad karma.
Hey, what kind of marks did you get?
Does it matter?
Yeah.
Be careful.
Great use of Dylan here, right? I mean, isn't he the coolest, Jessica?
Oh my
Tell me
God.
about your look at Dylan McKay.
I love him so much. There's just every camera angle on him is perfect. Every close up, his hair, the fact that he loves education. There's nothing hotter than a guy driving a Porsche in high school who knows poetry, Lord Byron, he likes history class. Guess what? He's not going to cheat because he loves education. He's smart and hot. I mean, dream.
Right, which is why I love Claire, by the way, because what was it? Sex, rock, and really decent literature, right?
That's exactly.
Right.
The one thing I did when that notion was planted, I wonder, Larry and Jessica, did you ever see or remember the movie Getting Straight with Elliot Gould as
Dustin Hoffman
in the Revolution? Right, with Candace Bergen.
Yeah.
Oh no, Getting Straight was Dustin Hoffman getting out of jail.
No.
What was it? What was the one where he? You're right. What was the one where he played the professor? It was filmed in Laney College against the Revolution. Anyway, his character was a professor, and he would go to bed with this beautiful black woman, which in 1970 you just pretty much hadn't seen. And what they did is they talked literature the whole time they were having sex. It made it. They cut it from the movie, but it made an impression on Charles.
I love it. Well, the other episode here to talk about would be Perfect Mom, and I don't really want to go too far into that episode because I feel like we could deep dive, but I think other people deserve that shot to talk about that. But I will want to ask you, Chuck, about Jenny's performance in that episode and just how wonderful she is and how she came to life and how it broke the tradition sort of a Walsh storyline.
Oh, absolutely. And there was a lot of contention because of it, quite frankly, because it I mean, Darren wrote it. Darren, and at this point, when you watch Jenny in the early episodes and how she was playing and the looks and the things she was doing, to think that she would have that reservoir of drama was not displayed, at least in what we had seen up to that point. Same with if you think about what Darren did for Ian Sanders in Slumber Party. They had never been challenged that way to act like that in this. And I remember that everybody was really thrilled with it. I think Shannon less so.
Shannon, what? I'm sorry, Larry.
Shannon less so. She saw this as a little bit of an infringement on that dyad that we had made. And but nonetheless, you don't know that. You look at this. She's up there. She's I'm doing it, but you do see in Perfect Mom a lot of rage to Cindy, and maybe when we get Carol Potter on sometime, that we should talk about that.
Yeah,
I thought Carol Potter was fascinating in the first 6 in a way that I didn't remember, and after the 17-year itch, we weren't allowed to have her be like that anymore.
I love when she yells at Jim, "Take me off speakerphone." Great moment.
Well, also there's a bit where they can't get the phone to work, right? There's always an issue when she's on the phone. It's like it hangs up on her automatically, which nobody in this world would ever know how to deal with a landline like that, Listen, I'm sure 90210 OMG, I'm sure Jenny and Tori will cover Perfect Mom, and I can't wait to hear that episode. I'm happy to shout them out and talk about that because, and I hope that they get Anne on, and I hope that they really dive into it because it's really some fantastic work out of Jenny and Anne and the whole cast there.
The one thing I can say that they will not add to the story is that, one of the reasons, Anne Gillespie looked great and she did a terrific audition. But the reason that I was partial is because she had done an NYPD directed by Greg Hoblit. And that was the top of the television food chain at that point. Hoblit was Bochco's #1 director at that element. And only later, many years later, did I find out that he was her brother-in-law.
Oh, wow. What a twist.
But, but I was so happy that someone with a legitimate credit actually walked through the door. And okay, you got it, because we didn't have that many of that. That's for sure.
Well, I think we wrap these 6. Jessica, it's always wonderful having you here with us.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Let me tell you about next week. Next week, we're going into season 4, and we're talking about Mr. Walsh Goes to Washington, the season ender of that. I am really excited to cover that. You guys, there's a lot to go over in that particular episode, but guess who's joining us next week? Ariel Hunter, Carrie Warher, is joining us. So that should be fun because there's that whole thing with David, Donna, and Ariel. So that's going to be a blast. She will be with us next week. I just want to let everybody know that you can always get us on Patreon, patreon.com/Beverly Hills 90210 show. There's a lot of really great stuff going on there. And make sure you check out Melanie's Hunts if you haven't already. I don't know where that image is. It's gone. So that's that. Sorry, Melanie. There it is. Okay. Make sure you check that out from December 17th to the 21st. And you can always find Beverly Hills 90210 on Pluto Television, right, Larry? We had a lot of fun tweeting along with them. Yeah.
Yeah, Pluto Television. What about the Christmas party, Pete? Tell
That's
them about
right.
the Christmas
Okay.
party.
Yes, I'm not.
Open house.
All the things you have to hawk and park here. That's right. Christmas party is going to be a blast. On the 23rd, we're going to cover a whole bunch of episodes. We're still putting it together. I'm not ready to announce who's going to be on there just yet. But we're working on getting that situated. Yes. And we're going to have
we did a lot of Christmas episodes. We did 6 of them. So why not?
Yes. Lisa says, what about my Patreon question? I missed it, Lisa. I didn't see it this week. I'm so sorry. All right. This is it. This was great. We will be back next week and where we cover Mr. Walsh Goes to Washington.
And it's on a Tuesday.
So that's right. Tuesday, December 15th. We're going to be here instead of Wednesday because Chuck has something going on. So, yes.
Oh, let's do it, Jessica. Oh,
He's
Larry.
going caroling.
Oh, Hanukkah. Oh, Hanukkah. It's our annual virtual Hanukkah party. Larry comes to our real party, and this is what
I missed the real party. It's so sad. I missed the food.
A lot of friends and bingo. So I'm sorry we had to go on Tuesday, but appreciate the whole support with everybody.
All right, son. Off here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Great week.
Thank you, Jessica. Bye-bye, Chuck.
Later, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.